District Attorney. Tori, if you could introduce yourself and your colleagues and then tell us how your year's been and what your budget ideas are.
Be glad to. I'm Tori Johnson, District Attorney. To my right is Michael Brook, who's the Director of Finance and Administration for the office. And to my left is Teresa Sharon, who is the Director of Victim Witness Services in the office. And I think that, of course, not much. In some ways, we have different initiatives, but basically, our job is pretty much the same, which is to handle all the cases, criminal cases that come into the general sessions, juvenile, and criminal courts in Davidson County. I think we've continued to have a good year. It's been a challenging year, as for everybody, given the economic realities of the last few years. And of course, as you know, we are both state and metro funded. And if you look at our handout today, we've got a pie chart that indicates clearly. Much of the work, a lot of the work we could not do and could not have done over the years without the city's involvement and support. We now have, in addition to support staff, we have 25 of our approximately 60 lawyers. 25 of them are paid by the city. And that means that there are lawyers that are going to our 6 criminal courts, our general sessions courts, and some of our special teams and so forth that are being paid for by the city in order to do things that obviously over time the city has thought were important to make sure were covered and covered adequately with enough staff. And I've put in your packet some sort of statistical material and shows different things that we've been involved in because we clearly are involved in the prosecution of major drug cases, major fraud cases. Of course, we are constantly, and now more and more gang activity, which we don't have a dedicated gang unit. Somewhere down the road, we're probably going to need to be looking at that because we don't have, I have one assistant and someone who is on the tail end of a grant that are working as part of their regular job. As a matter of fact, the lawyer I've got on it right now is a team leader in criminal court, has a full docket, but has a special interest in gang activity, and so he's kind of volunteered to take a part of it. That's better than no approach at all, but I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem down the road. But as I say, in the packet, you'll find other materials there that just simply highlight the various activities that we're in, economic crime and fraud, just millions of dollars that we've in complicated cases that we've prosecuted over the last year. But what I really wanted to mention is a nagging issue that is becoming an increasing problem. As you'll see, the first page, you'll see the pie chart that breaks out the difference between the state and the metro, or the share of state and metro appropriations. Next, you'll see a chart of just showing the total appropriations. Now, that's total meaning state and metro together. And as you can see, as you would expect, and we've been fortunate. I'll be the first to say that both on the state and on the city side, we've been very fortunate in the amount of the cuts that we've experienced in the economic downturn that we've gone through. Of course, that shows a flat and relatively maybe a slight downturn, while at the same time we've had an overall increase in the last few years in both in criminal court filings, in both warrants and citations, as well as indictments and informations. But and then of course behind that is another page that just simply is the calculation that details the requested 2% budget cut for this year. As you know, we pretty much, our budget is predominantly personnel, and so for us to cut, it's typically going to be people. Frankly, the lawyers are the more expensive people, and sometimes you can get to that cut faster if you eliminate a lawyer's position. Again, we're looking, if we were to do that, we would be cutting probably somewhere, the cuts would be somewhere in juvenile court, I think, again, focusing on the serious, what would be felony charges if they were adults, or transfer cases. We'd certainly keep our eye on, but other cases that go through the juvenile courts, we probably wouldn't. But the other thing that I wanted to point out is that one thing that's happened is traditionally we have, and it's the complication that comes from being paid from two different buckets here, is that we have always, when we've hired Metro paid assistant DAs, we have paid them as if they were state employees, so that, and our state budget, for the most part, is a 25-year step increase each year. And so consequently, if someone's been in the office 7 years, he or she is paid the very same amount as anybody else in the office that's also been in the office that amount of time. And that also then would carry across into the Metro paid assistants. So everybody in the office was sort of in lockstep depending upon their years. This didn't present a problem until about 10 years ago. I mean, that is, the city would project, they had the state's pay scale, and they were able to project on a baseline budget idea what was going to be needed for the next year as far as salary dollars were concerned. That changed about 8 or 9 years ago, where the budget department did not project the full amount of the amount that a lawyer would have been due under the state pay scale, which meant that we started to develop a gap. I mean, we were getting Metro revenue, but it was not enough to fully cover the pay raises that we were giving to our people on the Metro side. State side, they were being provided for at the state. And I should say that the way we've always done it is we would follow what the state did. If the state gave a raise, if the state, we would include that. If the state didn't give a raise, if the state, and they've done it a couple times, if they froze the step raises, we would do that on the Metro side. So, I mean, we made every effort we could to keep people in lockstep. But what that's done is over the last several years, we've now are about $190,000 out of whack as far as having to make up that amount of money. And the way we've done that is by leaving positions, either full-time or part-time positions, open in order to generate that amount of money. And so my situation is that what I'm really, we do have a request for a budget improvement amount of money, but the vast majority of that money is to make up for the shortfall that we've had over the last 3 or 4 years, that's been accumulated over the last 3 or 4 years, and to try to figure out a way to resolve this going forward. If we were able to do that, that would have the impact of allowing us to breathe some financial life into some of these positions, or frozen positions, that would allow us to do things in either the domestic violence area, the child sex abuse area, even the gang area, depending upon how that. These are positions that were in our budget, and not all of them are full-time. I mean, some of these are, I mean, they were not paid as full-time positions. Some of these were our the old remnants of Metro supplement positions, but some of them are full-time positions. And it would, but this is sort of I guess in some ways you could say it's a self-inflicted wound, but it is a problem that if it's not corrected, I've got two choices. Either I've got to continue to keep positions open, an ever-increasing number of positions, or I have to really abandon what we've been this pay process that we've been using for 20 to 25 years, and simply say, well, the state people are going to get paid the way the state people do, and Metro, we're going to have to come up with some other solution, but you're not going to be in lockstep. And I think that would would not be good for overall morale for the people that are working in the office. So that's really my only comment or point of discussion for today.
Well, in terms of the percentage that Metro pays of your budget, that's been a growing amount, hasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's...
Absolutely.
I mean, I think when I was public defender, it was probably 12, 15%. Does that sound too low?
That would probably 15 or 20 maybe, but it's grown and at one point, actually, I think may have actually maybe been just a little bit over 50%. That changed of several years ago when we got the state to take a pro rata share of the rent. And that was it's now about $340,000, $350,000 a year. And that kind of tipped it back with the state taking on more, being more responsible, but barely.
And do you, just a kind of general question, do you think you're funded properly by the state? I mean, I know you want more money from the state, but in comparison to other DAs around the state, do you think it's a fairly fair compensation from the state?
I think that I think staffing levels, I mean, that's a hard thing to do. There was a weighted caseload study. I think that was an effort to try to tease out some imbalances that had occurred where people were able, depending on who their district attorney was or who some of their legislative leaders were, they were able to get staff when nobody else could. I think there were definitely imbalances then. I think that's sort of evened out. I think we're probably, I mean, certainly we could make a good argument for more people, but I think that and at the state level, I think this year we expect a no impact, no cuts, but we're not looking for any. I mean, we don't believe there are any improvements either.
Is there, compared to the other major cities in Tennessee, what does Metro's contribution compare to Memphis, Knoxville, and Chattanooga?
Well, I would say Metro's and I don't hold me to this, but I would be confident that Metro is substantially more than Chattanooga and Knoxville. If you take Shelby County and the city of Memphis, they get a substantial amount of money from the county. They have a lot of county paid assistants. They have a lot of county and city paid investigators as well. The Memphis office, I think, has 105 lawyers maybe, or maybe even more than that. They've got 15 or 20 investigators. And a lot of those are locally paid. And now they do, I will say, they have two separate pay scales and have always done that. I mean, they've preceded us by a while of having a lot of money devoted to locally paid personnel.
And the benefit, I mean, from one argument would be that you see an increase in the amount of Metro money going in Metro positions, that you just confront the reality that there's two pots of funds, two categories of employees. It's not always fair, but some years the state's up, some years Metro's up, and it just works its way out. I mean, the major argument against that is morale and sort of.
Well, and just general administrative ease. It is good to just tell everybody you're all treated the same, even though they've got different benefit packages. I mean, in other words, they've all got access to pension and health and life, but it's 6 of one, half dozen the other as to what the differences are. But it's good to be able to move people around and feel like they're I don't have to worry that about what payroll they're on, and I don't have to worry that, well, this is somebody he's taking on more responsibility, but he's getting paid less because he's on a different payroll.
Right.
And yet I want him to take on more responsibility.
You don't assign people taking into consideration how they enter the office, whether it's state or
No,
metro.
everybody now, as I say, in Memphis, that's a different issue. I mean, they have sort of two tiers, and I think you have to apply maybe even to be hired on the other side of the office or something. I mean, they have more of a line of demarcation. That's just the way they've done it. We've always done it where it was always sort of a back office situation. There was no distinction between any of the lawyers as far as what payroll they were
The only
on.
way they know which payroll they're on.
It's
essentially,
just
is
whether they
Because
get
of the
paid
benefit.
once a month or
twice a month, and you're under Metro's health insurance or the state's health insurance.
Yeah.
Or,
Otherwise, they're completely.
so everybody's paying. So you're not, even though there's you need the 190. You don't need the 190 to pay it. You need the 190 to fill the vacant positions. Essentially, to have some money to be able to use.
Right.
You've been using salary savings. in
Salary
order to-
savings, and that's the accumulated effect of
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Would it look like this, though? Would it look like this? Would it be, I'm assuming these are the positions that have been left open?
Those are, but again, not all of those are full-time, fully paid positions.
I mean, ask a different way. So assuming there were that 190 or 200 in place, how would you redeploy it in a way that makes sense for what you need to do?
Well, if
Do you
I,
know?
yeah, I mean, well, we've got several different ideas. I mean, we would like to, I mean, I could pick a number of areas that we
Right.
say we'd like, but say take domestic violence, which
Right.
is historically, when Mayor Bredesen was here, we were funded with a team to handle domestic violence cases. We had to sort of cannibalize that team when the Fifth and Sixth Courts came in, and we didn't receive enough money from the state, and really frankly enough money from Metro to fully staff those two courts. So the only way we could do it was take people out of domestic violence. So if we went back there, we've looked at it, and we could add 2 lawyers and possibly an investigator. That would give us a very adequate number of people that could do domestic violence, which is something, and we'd be back to where we were 10 years ago as far as domestic violence cases were concerned. So that would probably be, I mean, as I'm sitting here, that would
Right,
probably be
you're right. I understand.
the greatest priority.
What's the, in terms of the state's domestic violence initiatives, what's the status of that?
Well, talked to Commissioner Gibbons yesterday, and I think they are still massaging the bill that does increase, it has a mandatory time. I'm not exactly sure, but I know they're trying to make it more palatable to the local jurisdictions because it is really it's a local funding issue because of more time. But that, I think, that's a good news, bad news. I mean, I think if you look at the mandatory punishments, I think there are a lot of good reasons to argue in favor of that. But I also think that it means that those issues are going to be a little more contentious, going to take up more attorney time, and another reason why I'd want to put maybe more resources down there if we're seeing that multiple offenders are going to be facing mandatory jail time. About 20% of our cases last year in 2011 were people that had one or more prior convictions for domestic assault.
All right, well, I think I understand it. You guys got any questions about anything
Nope.
else?
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
make sure I understand it right on the salary, if I'll get it right. So if the state gave you a 3% pay raise then you would have $50,000, making up numbers, for those raises. You would give it to even the Metro, and you would give it to the state, pay people, then try to figure out a way to come up with the money for the.
I mean, basically, if the state said, and this year that if there's a 2 or 2.5% pay raise, they would take those 25 steps, and all of those would rise 2.5%.
Okay.
We would then try to replicate that over here. On a year where they didn't give a pay increase, there would be just a step raise. And then in a few years, we've had no step raise at all. And I mean, where they've frozen it, and we've done the same thing on the Metro side. We've just tried to,
Make sure I understand.
as best we can, to replicate it so that it's, as the attorneys are concerned, it makes no difference.
Good. How's victim witness?
We keep on plugging along.
No. Good, good. Well, thanks for all you do for the city, and we'll do our best. Thanks.
Thank you, appreciate it.